Hello everyone, welcome again to another episode of Be Kindled. I'm Ginika Okoro and I speak on 3 pertinent topics: on conscious leadership, on identity, and elegant transitions. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about something that is very important for everyone. Whether you are a child, a teenager, an adult, middle-aged, senior citizen, a pastor, a professional, a business owner, a senior executive. I don't care where you sit in the ecosystem that we are in. You need this skill. And I'm talking about feedback. Some people hear feedback and they cringe. Some hear feedback and they're like, feedback champion and breakfast of champions. Wherever you fall, I'm hoping that this episode is relevant to you and you can take 1 or 2 things that can help you give and receive feedback more effectively. We're going to be talking about 4 big pillars. I'll break this down in 4 big pillars. First thing is, why is feedback important? Also, what is the challenge with feedback? Why is it hard? And then we'll go on to how to give feedback and how to receive feedback in a manner that enhances growth. So let's start. The first thing I'll tell you is that feedback is a gift. It's something I heard from a dear mentor of mine years ago, and has stayed with me. So like with every gift, you decide what you want to do with it. How do you want to play it? Do you want to use the gift? Do you want to repurpose it? What do you want to do with your gift? But by the time you shift your mindset to feedback being a gift, it stops being scary. So think of it as feedback is a gift. Now, why is feedback important? You see, feedback is necessary. It's not one of those things you can do without, except you don't want to grow, except you don't want to build good relationships, not just romantic relationships, but even the platonic relationship, deep relationships. At the heart of it is being able to give feedback effectively. Feedback is important because 1, it helps you grow. If you want to grow, you need to learn to be comfortable with feedback. And feedback, when we talk about feedback, growth comes from it's not just any feedback, constructive feedback. Some people will want to give you feedback. You see people online every time giving unsolicited feedback, which sometimes can come off the wrong way and could be very emotional and lack constructive and objective elements to it. Feedback that is useful must be constructive. It must be constructive. So feedback is necessary for growth. You cannot grow without feedback. The second thing, why feedback is important, it also deepens and strengthens relationships. The good thing about feedback is it helps you identify your blind spots. There's a part of your head at the back that you cannot see. There are parts of when you're having your bath and you can't touch. There's a part of your back that you cannot get to, except some people wriggle like worms before they get there. That is how feedback is. It helps you identify those areas that you're not conversant with, you don't see, but it's how you show up. That's what feedback does to you. It brings to light those things that are not at your fore, especially when it's given with grace and with truth, and we'll get to that. Another reason feedback is very important is because it helps you validate what you're doing well and what you're not doing well. Feedback helps you validate your strengths and your weaknesses. And the last thing I would say is feedback is necessary because it just helps you become more self-aware. We've talked about self-awareness as a characteristic of a conscious leader. You cannot be self-aware without feedback. And you cannot grow, like I said before, without feedback. So feedback is a necessary thing. If a child does something wrong and nobody is correcting him, then you're setting the person up for failure. Same with anybody. You cannot love someone and not give them feedback. And don't get me wrong, feedback is not only negative. It's not only something that the person did not do right. Feedback also comes, or rather, feedback should also be a habit when someone does something well. And that leads me to, what is the problem with feedback? I would say one thing that makes feedback difficult, when you think about feedback and someone says, oh, I want to give you feedback, you're already palpitating, is because many times people don't give feedback from a place of growth. It's feedback that's given from a place of, it's like you're judging the person. So it usually comes with a tone of judgment, and shame sometimes. And that is not at the heart of feedback. Good feedback, constructive feedback, judgment is not found. The second thing that makes feedback hard is feedback is at the cusp of the human need, for growth. When you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, the need for growth and the need for acceptance, the need for belonging. And in between, you're finding that for you to grow, you must be giving feedback, but you also want to be liked. You also want to be accepted. So it makes it difficult because it's like you're brewing conflict, even though you know that it's necessary for growth. So you see that it's like, it's not an easy thing to do. You want to be liked, but you know it's a necessary element for growth. And so you find that there's that conflict that happens to every person when giving feedback. Another thing is, when receiving feedback, the ego is usually at play. If you're not careful, your ego, responds. You hear what the person is saying, but you refuse to receive it because your ego is at the fore. So sometimes it's hard to give feedback when you're not sure how this person will respond or will react. And so you are like, I don't want problems. I don't want wahala. And so you avoid it. But the truth is, avoidance is the cowardice way to approach things. You cannot have deep relationships without giving hard feedback. At the same time, you can't have rich relationships. You cannot have rich discussions if you're not giving feedback fast, timely, with grace, with truth. Everybody needs truth. Bible says that the truth will set you free. But the truth you do not know cannot set you free. And that's where constructive feedback comes in, where people can show you a mirror with grace and with truth and help you see what you are not able to see. So this, for me, summarizes why feedback is important, but it's also difficult. And let's all be honest with ourselves. It is difficult. I'm going to give a personal example as we go into I'll talk about ways to give feedback gracefully and with truth. And you will see why I keep using grace and truth. I had an experience with someone some time ago, and I was really, really, really upset. Very upset. And I didn't know how to give the feedback without coming off as rude. I didn't want that to be the case. And so I took it to God. I was praying. And then the Holy Spirit taught me this. He says, it just dropped in my spirit as I was praying. It says the testimony of Jesus at the beginning of John was, and he dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the begotten Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. That's what they talked about Jesus when he came and he left. He was full of grace and truth. Jesus didn't stop telling truth, but he did it with grace. And that's how the Holy Spirit taught me to give feedback. And so I'm going to be talking today about how to give feedback with grace and truth. And we're going to start with, how do you give with grace? And then I'll go into the truth element. I'll outline things that you can do to give graciously so it can be received properly. You know that thing where they say, it is not what you say, it is how you say it. It is not what you know, it's how you make people feel about what you know. So that's what grace and truth. So when you're giving feedback with grace, the first thing to know is it should come with compassion. It should come with compassion and not judgment. If you remember, I said one of the things that makes feedback hard is when someone tells you, can I give you feedback? The first thing you think of is this person wants to judge me. And so when you're giving feedback with grace, take away the judgment element. And what does that mean? You're not trying to break the person's spirit. You're not trying to make the person feel small. What you're trying to do is give it with sincerity and also give it with the kind of openness that allows the person to express themselves. What does that mean? If you're talking to somebody and you go, you always do this. Every time you do this, that already is judgment because you're generalizing without even making it clear what the person did, and it's already coming with judgment. Another thing that you can do to give with grace is, I said, address the behavior. Address the behavior. Address how it made you feel, and then address what the impact was. Don't go addressing the person. You're not trying to break the person. Address the behavior. Talk about how it made you feel, the impact it had on you, and then talk about the outcome. Yeah? So what do I mean by this? Maybe you had a presentation, or let me use a presentation. You had a presentation and you and your team, you were working on something, and at the end of the day, when you saw the presentation at the boardroom, for instance, what was presented wasn't what was agreed. Trust me, to piss anybody off. You're like, but we worked on this together. Why is this showing up? If you want to give feedback, how would you do it? So when I say you give it with grace and you give it without judgment, but you address the behavior, you talk about how it made you feel, and you talk about the outcome. What that means in this scenario is you're talking about the behavior, not the person. I noticed. So even the way you talk, and we'll come to it, the truth part, I noticed. It's you that noticed, not like it's the person. You also need to give an opportunity for the person to explain. So you're not going with, you went to present without adding, that's an attack. I don't like it. You went to present without including my input. I noticed that you presented this without this input. I know we worked on it together. This is how it made me feel. But I'd like to understand what happened there. That is a different approach than if you say, I want to give you feedback. You removed my slide. I don't know what happened. Is there something you want to tell me? Already, you are judging the person. Your tone is a bit off. And the person doesn't even hear what you're saying because already they're on the defensive. So that's what I mean when I say, talk about you. This is the behavior. Then this is how I perceived it, because you need to give room for error. What if you were wrong? What if that night before the meeting, he didn't have time to do things and the boss said, take this out, let's make it shorter, and he had to make a judgment call there. What if you do not know everything? Give room for those errors when you say, I noticed. This is how it made me feel. Can you help me understand? You're opening it up. You're opening it up for dialogue. That is one way to be compassionate. The other way is promote a two-way conversation. So when I say, think this example, for instance, is help me understand what happened here. That way the person can say, so before we entered into the room, XYZ told me to take it out because they didn't have a lot of time to go into that detail. And I didn't have time to let you know. Or whatever it is. Or maybe he even did it deliberately and just, I'm so sorry, it was an oversight. But because you've opened it up to, in a way that you're opening up the dialogue, and it's not a statement, it's more of a dialogue that you're opening up for, he'll be more receptible, he or she will be more receptible to that conversation than if you go with an attack. That way, you're getting more from them. They're understanding the impact it had on you. And then you can follow up with the expected outcome. Oh, you should have let me know. I would have appreciated if you let me know. It's a lot about the tone. It's a lot about the choice of words than it is about what you're saying, to be honest. So when I say promote a two-way conversation, use questions. Open-ended questions, not leading questions. What that means is open-ended questions allows for dialogue. So things like, help me understand, what do you think about, then, is this what you are doing? You understand? You're already leading person to what you think they are doing. Is this what you are doing? That's not a question that opens for dialogue. So ask open-ended questions that allow for dialogue. If you want to give someone feedback, you could say, please help me understand what happened here. Sometimes it's an oversight. Sometimes it could be something that happened that was done in a hurry. Give room for people to make mistakes, but feedback helps them correct it. Now, the thing is, many times when you're giving feedback, remember that even you, sometimes you're not okay, you're not correct, you're not 100%. And it's in someone giving you feedback that you're able to course correct. So know that it's not every time that you're in the right. So give that same grace to somebody when they've fallen short. That is what it means to give feedback with grace. The other thing I'll talk about is be sensitive to your tone, be sensitive to your pace. There's something about, if you're a fast talker like me, when you're upset, it could come off as being very hot-headed. Even if you're talking, and you're giving the facts and you're saying is because of the pace in which and the tone, for instance, your tone is upbeat, you're upset, you probably will be giving off a very, abrasive vibe. So check your tone. If you're a fast talker, just slow your pace a bit. Let the person hear you. Your tone is important. Your tone is important. My tone, my normal decibel can be very, very direct and very curt. And so when I'm giving feedback, I have to be so conscious that this person does not think I want to beat them. Because I've been told many times, like, you want to beat me. It's not beating, it's passion. I'm just passionate. Even when I teach, when I'm in the heat of something I really like talking about, or I'm really, enthused about, you find that my tone is very, direct, is very what's the word now? I'm looking for the right word. It's direct. My pace in speaking is fast. And I have to consciously know that, you know what, if I'm going to give someone feedback, I have to practice in the mirror if necessary, and then slow my pace so that it doesn't come. I'm not trying to break the person's spirit. I'm trying to address a behavior. It's very important that you know that. I've been told before, and it was an interesting feedback from a friend of mine, a dear friend, but like I said, feedback is a gift and you choose how you want to receive it. And I was told that when you give feedback to your team, because I asked for feedback, give me feedback on my leadership. And he says, when you give feedback to your team, yeah, you give them the feedback. You're clear, you're precise. But the next moment you start playing with them, you start asking, oh, what are we eating today? You don't allow them to sit with it. When I was told that, I was like, am I a weak leader? And then I remember that one thing I did not want to be when I became someone in authority, someone that makes people feel small or hangs guilt over anyone's head, because it didn't help me when I was in those shoes perform well. So when I give feedback, the tone is important. The clarity of the message is important. But one thing I try to do every time is immediately that has landed, they understand it, we move. So that you know that this doesn't define you. That is very important. You could have your own way of doing that. But for me, I want us to move on quickly. You can always come back when the tempers are down, and we'll talk about it in a more casual setting. But in that moment, because I know that you're already feeling beat up, the tendency is you're feeling guilty, you're feeling ashamed, you're feeling judged. I need you to come out of it, and so I move quickly. That is me giving grace to the person to know that it's really not about the person, it's about the behavior that we're going to correct. So I digress, but I was talking about tone. Your tone is important. You don't want to be the person. You're not trying to beat up the person. Your pace is important, especially if you're a fast talker and very passionate. It could land differently when you are in the heat of it. So you need to be conscious about it, because you want the person to go feeling empowered, not feeling smaller. And then part of giving grace is when you're done giving the feedback, offer options. Have you considered XYZ? Have you considered, I said open up a dialogue. Have you considered this? Feedback is supposed to be a way to coach you into the right thing. Sometimes the person giving the feedback may not have the solution, but open it for conversation. Has this been given to you before? What support can I give you? Especially if you're a line manager, for instance, or you're a leader, or you're a parent. Don't just tell someone what you think did not work and leave them be. Part of giving it with grace is asking them how you can help them bridge that gap between who they are and what you have noticed and who you know they can be. How do you help them grow? So you offer options. Have you considered this? What do you think about, if we do it this way? There was someone that told me your pace when you're talking is that you want to beat somebody, especially when you're passionate. So I'm very conscious of it. Even when I speak on camera, I have to slow down my pace because now I'm conscious of it. It came through feedback. So offer options. And part of being graceful is you're not looking backward, forward-looking options. Next time when we are doing the presentation, I will take charge. You can tell the person, I will check if you've done it again. I'll let you know. Why don't you consider it like this? Okay, next time, what do you think? If you do it like this, I'll let you know. Let the person know that you're not in this to get you alone. I'm in this with you. I've given you the feedback, but we're going to walk with you. Feedback can be beautiful. It can be beautiful. Yeah? Now, let's talk about receiving feedback with truth.